Hey guys, how's it going? Uriel Kim here and welcome to the Metabolism Masterclass. This is a video series that I'm putting together just for you because I want to show you how to reset your metabolism to lose up to 5 pounds per week. Now I know that may seem a little bit hard to believe, but I'm going to show you that it's actually possible to do and that a lot of other people, a lot of our clients have done just that. Now if you're watching this, it's probably because you want to lose weight and you've perhaps struggled to lose weight over the past couple of years or decades, and you've tried everything. You've eaten well, you've exercised regularly, but still nothing is moving. Perhaps you've even lost a couple pounds and put them back on and lost them again and put them back on, and you've just hit a plateau and you're just not sure where to turn. So I get it if you're frustrated, and perhaps you feel frustrated by the lack of results or the sheer overwhelming amount of conflicting information that has been fire hosed in your direction. I mean, believe me, I can attest to that as well. Or perhaps you feel like you've lost hope, where you've tried several other diets. You may have lost some weight, but nothing really lasted. Or maybe you tried everything, but still it just seemed like your body was working against you. So I get it, but I also want you to understand that the future does not have to be as bleak as the past. Because I don't know if you understand this or know this, but your body is constantly recycling and regenerating itself, which means that every single one of the cells in your body is going to be replenished and brand new by this time next year. Think about that. Physically, you will be a new person in a year from now, and that body of yours is determined based on the actions you take today and moving forward. So I don't know about you, but that's really encouraging because that puts your future back in your hands, which is really exciting. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through a number of metabolism killers that are standing in your way of losing the weight and keeping it off. And if you're a little bit unsure about, whether or not this is going to work, well, let me share 2 little stories with you. Take, for instance, one of our clients, Patrick. Now, Patrick was a really, really busy guy for work. He's traveling all over the place, and he also had a 2-year-old son at home. So obviously he wanted to spend some time with him as well as do everything else. But like many people in his situation, like many parents, for instance, when you've got kids, a lot of times you sacrifice your own time for yourself. And that's exactly what happened to Patrick. As a result, he packed on a lot of weight over the past couple of years, and in spite of doing a lot of other diet programs, a lot of very popular ones, he was not able to keep the weight off and really see no lasting results. However, something changed when Patrick saw the information I'm going to share with you in this Metabolism Masterclass. He finally found something that made sense, and he committed to it. And Patrick is truly amazing because he carved time out of his day to get in his workouts, to eat properly, to do the things I'm going to walk you through in this video series. And over the course of a couple weeks, he had way more energy. By the time he was getting home from work, he had more energy to play with his son. When they would put their son to bed, he was able to go for a bit of a walk by himself or with his wife, and he was just feeling great. And over the course of 2 months, he lost 30 pounds and lost 12 inches from his waist. Now, speaking to Patrick, he said the worst part of the whole thing was that none of his clothes fit anymore. So, a nice strategic byproduct. Or how about Michelle? So Michelle is a lady who for years suffered with constant bloating, acne, and none of her clothes fit her anymore. She even got so self-conscious to the point where her stomach, she was so embarrassed by it that she would wear big baggy shirts over top to hide herself from that. Now, can you relate to that? I mean, I certainly can. Obviously with the whole eyebrow thing and hair loss, as I've shared with you in the past. So again, like with Patrick, Michelle had tried many other diets, but nothing worked. And so she just felt miserable. She had lackluster energy, really no inspiration to just feed herself well. So she was relying on microwave dinners and easy to prepare pastas that took 5 or 10 minutes to make. As a result, her health and her waistline were suffering. However, again, when she was exposed to this information that I'm going to be sharing with you, a light went off for her. Finally, something that made sense. And over the course of a couple weeks, she followed this advice, and her body started to transform. Very quickly, she had more energy. Her hair was actually fuller and thicker and healthier looking. Her acne went away, And she lost 18 pounds in just 60 days, 2 months. And more importantly, I think for her was that she no longer had to hide underneath these big baggy shirts. And I want these same successes for you as well. Over the past 2 decades, I've helped over 500,000 men and women achieve these types of results. And I understand that there's many, many, many more who have not used my advice and taken my guidance and are still struggling. And I want to put an end to that as best I possibly can. So for that reason, I'm putting together this Metabolism Masterclass to lay out a really proven plan that you can follow as well to really make a difference in your body and in your life. So over the next couple of videos, I'm gonna walk you through exactly what's been holding you back, how to solve the problem, a 4-step reset that's gonna make all the difference. It's very different from pretty much everything else you've ever tried. And I'm gonna share some more amazing, excuse me, transformations with you in those videos. So for now, let's jump into these metabolism killers and understand why they're holding you back, okay? So these are metabolism killers because they're big myths, they're big fat lies, and I want to put an end to them. So let's start off with the fill in the blank section, shall we? So number 1 is this one. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but you may have heard that people have said you should have carbs for breakfast. I'll just put be fast. So what's interesting about this is that in the 1800s, there was a doctor in Battle Creek, Michigan, who worked in a sanitarium, so working with, crazy patients, for the lack of a better term. He was feeding them vegetarian diets because he found that the vegetarian diet was actually suppressing, or kind of, more or less suppressing their passion and sexual arousal, so they were a little more subdued. And part of this diet was really interesting. He was feeding them stale, moldy grains, a concoction that he had put together, and eventually kind of turned them into flakes and so forth. Several years later, he partnered with his brother, William Kellogg, and together, John and William Kellogg, in 1896, created and came out with what was called Granose Flakes, which was essentially the first version of corn flakes. Interesting, right? Interesting how that all started. What's even more interesting is that one of Dr. John Kellogg's patients, Charles Post cereal, was involved in this whole kind of teaching. And one of Dr. John Kellogg's mentors was Sylvester Graham of Graham Crackers. So when we talk about carbs for breakfast, there's no shortage of history behind this. It all started with this story that I just told you. And for years and decades, they've been marketing to us to tell us to eat cereal in the morning. And cereal goes, orange juice, toast, muffins, it's all part of the same thing. So the problem with eating carbs for breakfast is that it suppresses your natural circadian rhythm. And what I mean by this is that, I'll just draw this out if I can somewhere here. Normally in the morning, your cortisol, cortisol is an important hormone. We'll talk a lot about it in this series. In the morning, cortisol is supposed to be high, and throughout the day, it's supposed to go down. What cortisol does, among other things, is that it actually mobilizes energy from your body. So it actually breaks down muscle glycogen, which is stored carbohydrates, and breaks it down into blood sugar to maintain a balanced blood sugar level. The problem though is when you have carbs for breakfast and you're eating them, cereal, toast, bagels, all that stuff, is that cortisol response becomes blunted. Because now what your body is realizing is that you're getting sugar coming into your blood from those carbs, and therefore your cortisol doesn't have to be as high. So you might initially think that's a good thing, but it's not. Because this circadian rhythm is everything when it comes to your ability to burn fat and keep it off. So if you continue to blunt that cortisol response every single day, over time, this entire circadian rhythm gets out of whack. And remember, cortisol is an adrenal hormone. It's a stress hormone secreted by your adrenal glands, and it literally is your body's master fat loss switch. Remember, if your body perceives itself to be in a threatening situation, remember, if this is normal and this is not normal, this becomes a threat. your body now sees that as a stress, as something that it needs to fend itself against. So instead of burning fat, it's going to hold on to it. So this is really important. Carbs for breakfast, not a very good idea. What I'm actually going to tell you in the next in video number 3 is I'm going to walk you through how to eat carbs properly. Okay? Now that's going to lead us to number 2, which is another metabolism myth/killer, which is carbs are bad. Now this thinking began all the way back in the 1700s, and it's just been pervasive ever since. And especially in the 1990s and 2000s, the carbs are bad, the whole low carb diet craze was so prominent that at any point during that decade of the 1990s, it was said that 18% of the US population was on a low carb diet. 18% of the population. And remember, that's including like kids and stuff who don't even diet. So that's a very high proportion of adults who are following a low carb diet. Now, the problem with the thinking that carbs are bad is if you go low carb, here's what happens. Carbohydrate consumption, first of all, here's why you lose weight on a low carb diet. When you don't eat carbs, you lose water. Okay, because for every gram of carbohydrates, you're going to hold on to 4 grams of water. So as soon as you lose the carbohydrates, you're naturally going to lose water and thus weight. But the problem is that as soon as you eat carbs again, you put it right back on. So that's usually why low carb diets are very successful in terms of weight loss in the short term, but don't really last in the long term. But more problematic than that is the fact that low carbohydrate consumption has been extensively shown in research in clinical settings to slow down your thyroid. And you probably know that your thyroid is your master metabolism gland. So we are here talking about metabolism, right? We want to keep it healthy and revved up. We don't want to suppress it. So by reducing your carbohydrate consumption consistently, by going on a low carb kind of ketogenic type of diet, you are putting your thyroid at great danger. And it's not just about, okay, you can lose a couple pounds in the short term, but what are you doing to your metabolism in the long term? Okay, the studies have shown that low carbohydrate consumption over time, even over a couple days, decreases T3, which is the active thyroid hormone, and is not a good thing. Okay, the other thing with low carbohydrate consumption is that it disrupts normal leptin function. Leptin is an important hormone that tells your brain, hey, I'm full. But that becomes a little bit messed up when you go too low carb for too long. So again, in video 3, I'm going to show you how to eat carbs strategically so that you can benefit from low carbohydrate weight loss without compromising your thyroid and your metabolism. It's a really, really clever strategy that, again, is not something I invented. It's been strategic. It's been scientifically proven for a long time. And a lot of people who have a tough time breaking through those weight loss plateaus, when they start doing this type of stuff that I'm going to show you, boom, it's like overnight results that actually last. So video 3 is where I'm going to share it with that. I'm going to share that with you. Okay. Number 3, you having a good time so far? We're okay? We're good? Okay. So metabolism myth/killer number 3 is this one. You have to eat 5 to 6 meals per day. Have you ever heard this? You have to eat all the time? Dietitians have been preaching this for years now, and they're saying, well, it's important to stabilize your blood sugar. Therefore, you have to eat all the time so your blood sugar is stable. Because if you don't eat all the time, your body's going to think that it's starving, and it's going to shut down into survival mode, and it's going to store fat. Okay, well, that's a load of BS, okay? 5 to 6 meals a day, here's the reality, okay? The research shows that if you have 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day, 5, 6 meals a day, it doesn't matter. As long as total calories are the same, the effect on weight loss is no different, okay? So I personally, right now, in this moment of time in my life, I usually have 2 meals a day. I have a smoothie, generally for breakfast, and then a big dinner. I don't eat much during the day because I'm working and I'm shooting videos like this. So I don't have time to eat and I just don't feel like it. When I was playing professional soccer in my early 20s, I was eating like a racehorse 5 or 6 times a day because my body needed that amount of fuel. So you have to remember to listen to your body, not the latest dietitian telling you have to eat this way. Let me tell you why this way is not the smartest way to be eating either. We know that, as I said before, your body perceives a state of threats or stress as a state of threat, and it's going to hold on to fat as a result of that. Well, one of the ways to scare your body even further is to have very high cortisol all the time. So how does that happen? Well, there's a lot of ways that can happen, but let me share with you one way right here. When you are constantly eating, what happens? Well, your body breaks that food down and your blood sugar rises. Well, your body says, you know what, body, we can't have high blood sugar. That's not safe for us. We must release a hormone called insulin, and insulin is going to take that blood sugar or that sugar out of the blood, reducing it to a normal level and storing it in our fat, muscle, and liver cells. So here's the thing from the fat loss perspective. You don't want too much insulin because insulin is one of your only storage hormones. So if you constantly have high insulin, are you going to be in fat burning mode? No, you're going to be in fat storing mode. But here's the other thing. Not only is high blood sugar dangerous, high insulin is potentially even more dangerous. Not only does your body become resistant to too much insulin over time, and that leads to something called type 2 diabetes, but the other thing is that high insulin signals high cortisol. High cortisol leads to hold on to fat, and cortisol specifically stores or tends to store fat around your belly. So not a good idea. Okay? I'm going to suggest to you that you want to eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. Whether that's 5 times a day, hey, that's up to you. Whether that's 1 or 2 times a day, that's up to you as well. You have to really listen to your body and understand that a lot of this stuff is nonsense. So you don't have to believe that. And if you eat only once a day, you will not be sabotaging your metabolism. Okay? Now, let's switch gears and talk about exercise for a second, because our final metabolism killer is a big one. And I was recently in Barbados, and I was on the beach, obviously, and I noticed the same people walking by every single day, and they'd be walking laps, like back and forth on the beach. I'm like, you know, great for you, that's awesome. And what I'm going to suggest here is that walking, I'm not just suggesting this, I'm actually telling you this as scientific proof, walking is not enough. So those men and women walking on the beach, awesome, good for them. It's kind of like breathing. You want to do it anyways. It just should be. You shouldn't have to be like, I'm going to go for a workout, which is going to be a walk. No, you go for a walk because you should. It's just keeping your body mobile and getting fresh air. But if we want to keep our metabolism healthy and strong, the major determinant, other than your thyroid, is going to be your muscle. Let me write this down so we get this. Okay? Muscle is everything when it comes to metabolism. Again, assuming a healthy thyroid function. Walking, unless you're walking with 100 pounds on top of you, is not enough because your body is used to your weight. Right? So it's not a stress, not a good stress on your muscles. So walking should happen every single day, minimum of 30 minutes. Do it, absolutely. But if you're thinking walking is going to help you lose weight, well, there's studies that show that it does, but in the long term, what's going to help you lose weight and keep your body burning through calories 24/7 is muscle. Your basal metabolic rate accounts for 75% of the calories you burn every single day is determined by your basal metabolic rate, which is you doing nothing and just laying down still. Even if you worked out, that workout is going to account for maybe 10 to 15% of your daily caloric expenditure. Food, the thermic effect of food accounts for about 10%. 75%, I'd rather focus here, right? That would make a lot of sense. Muscle is the feeding ground for your basal metabolic rate. Why? Because your muscle contains more mitochondria, which are those powerhouses inside your cell that produce energy. The more muscle you have, the more mitochondria you have. The more mitochondria you have, the more energy you produce, and as a result, the more fat, more calories you burn, more heat you generate. Okay, that's a really quick rundown of the physiology of how it all works. So if you want a healthy metabolism, you have to have muscle. If we're both 200 pounds, and I've got 10% body fat and you've got 30% body fat, my metabolism is higher because I've got more muscle mass. Does that make sense? So walking is not going to build muscle mass. It's great, but you have to focus on resistance training, and we'll talk about that again in video 3. So anyways, that's all for today's lesson, but I want you to understand this. If you start to move away from these myths, your body and your life and your health will transform for the better. However, if you continue to do these things and believe these things, they will sabotage you. Your metabolism will dwindle, you'll have a very tough time breaking through weight loss plateaus, you'll even gain weight as you get older, and your health is going to just go down the tank, okay? But I wanna help you avoid and prevent that. So in the next video, I'm gonna walk you through six fat triggers. So these are 6 triggers that force your body to store fat. We talked about these myths, but now we're going to go into 6 specific things, the 6 big reasons that so many people are struggling with their weight, and specifically how they affect your hormones. Because at the end of the day, remember, if you've been doing everything well, the exercise and the eating and all that good stuff, and you're not able to lose weight, it's because your internal physiology is messed up. And this is not your fault. But there are things happening inside of you, invisible forces at the hormonal level, physiologically, that are not allowing you to lose weight. So we'll explore those in the next video, and then we'll start looking at some of the solutions after that. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments below. Just type in your comments and question or feedback. Let me know what you thought of this video, if any of this stuff resonated with you. Thank you so much for joining me in this first video of our Metabolism Masterclass, and stay tuned for video number 2 called the 6 Fat Triggers, coming your way very shortly.